At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast, episode 45, interview with Kevin Schreck, director of the documentary Persistence of Vision. You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, Don Bluth, and everything in between. My name is Chelsea Robson.
And I'm Mason Smith. Sorry.
We're so glad to have you today. This is going to be a special episode. Mason has just had an incredible opportunity to interview the director of our last podcast. We talked about The Persistence of Vision. It's a documentary. It's on the film festival circuit right now, and it's just getting a lot of buzz. Really cool film. But he had the opportunity to sit down and talk with him. So we're excited to let you guys in on this really awesome interview.
Yeah, let's start it. Let's put it in the VCR and press play.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
Empower. Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at Empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
The thing with The Thief that I'm just trying to do, what they call a masterpiece.
You've maxed out your 401k. You're contributing to an IRA and making some other investments. You're ahead of the game and doing well. But where do you go from here? The same old story can only get you so far. If you want a new take from a new type of financial professional, we invite you to get a fresh perspective beside an agent with the backing of New York Life. Insurance, investments, retirement, and more. Visit NYL.com to learn more. Investments are offered through registered representatives of NYLife Securities, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a New York Life company.
When you master a medium, in the old days, if you were a master painter, then you did your masterpiece. Well, this is an old-fashioned that I've mastered this medium at last. And I'm going to do a masterpiece, I hope, if I can ever finish the thing.
He wanted to create the greatest animation film of all time, but it didn't happen.
It was this building in London with these people working in it that were going to save the art of animation and take it beyond.
All right, fellow animation addicts. Today, while we're recording this, we're actually releasing the Thief and the Cobbler episode that we recorded last week. And we are super excited about that because, The Thief and the Cobbler is like a really awesome, interesting film. But when we juxtapose that with watching the documentary, The Persistence of Vision, it kind of made it all like come together, and it was really cool. And it really, well, we'll get into that in a second, how awesome the documentary is. But we actually have a special treat for y'all. We managed to get a hold of the director and producer of The Persistence of Vision. And so today we're going to have a special interview. I want to say that we're interviewing with Schreck. but it's actually Kevin Schreck out of Brooklyn. He is the director for The Persistence of Vision, and we're super excited to have him on the show. How are you doing, Kevin?
I am doing just fine. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. We're super excited because as the animation nerds that we are, we really appreciated the documentary. First of all, great job on the film.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, really well put together. We really enjoyed watching it, and like I said, it really enhanced our viewing of The Thief and the Cobbler because I think you'd agree. If you just go on Netflix and watch it, not knowing the history and not knowing what it was and what it could have been, you're not likely to appreciate it.
Sure.
As if you had watched the documentary or learned some history about the film and about Richard Williams. By way of introduction, I have pulled up your resume on the official website, and so I'm going to just share little highlights as if I was going to hire you for a job, and then I'm just kidding. Documentary filmmaker, and as I just announced, director and producer of The Persistence of Vision, and you're an intern at DreamWorks Animation. Awesome.
Well, I was a few years ago, yes.
You were a few years ago. Okay, cool. Well, awesome. And again, congratulations on the film, and congratulations on, it says you were official selection on a lot of international film festivals, and, you got to work with recording the interviews with various animators. And so your background is film, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I kind of lean towards documentaries, but that's kind of what I've always been gravitating towards pretty much my whole life, really, is film, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. I dug up a little news story about your stop-motion videos way back.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so stop-motion would be considered animation. Now, you're also interested in animation. So you're a documentary filmmaker. What kind of animation experience or background do you have?
Well, not enough to call myself an animator, that's for sure. I feel like that's a really privileged, that's a name you have to earn. But I love animation, and always have. I mean, obviously, some of my first introductions to film were through animated films, right. And I think what I love about animation is that it's a medium in which, in theory, you can have control over all the aspects, but that means you have a lot of responsibility to do that, which again means that you have a lot of, everything has to be very specifically put together, even more so than other forms of filmmaking. The whole design of it, the movement, the performance of characters, the music, the color schemes, everything really. And whether it's computer generated or traditional hand drawn or stop motion or with paint or meat or sand or whatever, or pins. So what I have done with animation is mostly just a few stop motion things in the past. And actually that's kind of how I got more aware of Richard Williams in an academic sense, was studying his book as a teenager, because he helped make my otherwise completely ignorant and terrible little movies into something that's somewhat watchable, studying his book. Because he is the best, and that book is just essential.
Okay, awesome. So I would agree also that animation is a great springboard for anyone to be interested in film, because as children, those are usually the most dynamic and memorable films that we come into contact to. Really cool. Awesome. So this isn't really on the questions we sent you, but what we do when we have a new person on the show, we do this little segment called Catch and Fire, and it's like a rapid fire kind of question thing. It's supposed to be fun, and so just to kind of get to know you a little better, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and then you just answer the first thing that comes into your head, as quickly as you can.
Okay.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit ServiceNow.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video, March 27th.
You're a great marksman, Derek. One of the best. But it takes more than good aim. It takes courage. That's my forte.
Well then, how about a quick round of catch and fire?
Catch and fire? You mean me?
You're the only one with enough courage.
Okay, first question. What was the first animated movie you remember seeing?
Bambi.
Favorite cartoon growing up?
Character or film?
Film. A cartoon show.
Maybe the Looney Tunes.
Favorite animated movie?
Either ever? Probably Fantasia or Nightmare Before Christmas.
Favorite animator / artist?
That's hard to say. Maybe Richard Williams.
All right.
For animator at least. Artist, it's hard to say.
Cool. Seems relevant. Richard Williams.
Yeah.
Classic animation or CGI?
Classic animation. Definitely.
Hand-drawn? Definitely. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Favorite animation studio?
Like working today or just ever? I don't know. I guess maybe the old Warner Brothers Termite Terrace is kind of interesting just because of all the personalities there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So right now, Disney or Pixar?
Right now, I guess Pixar. They've got a great track record.
Yeah, they really do.
Yeah.
Leica or Studio Ghibli?
Oh, Leica, yeah.
Disneyland or Disney World?
I've never been to World, but there's a part of me that feels kind of grossed out by World, probably because it's built on top of a bunch of beautiful wetlands, whereas Disneyland was just destroying, desert. But I don't know. It's a different sort of natural resource. I'm just biased. Disneyland. I've been there a couple times. I like it. I admit I like Disneyland.
Now, as far as characters go, Stitch or Tinkerbell?
Stitch.
Mickey, Goofy, or Donald?
Donald.
Songs in film or no songs?
Depends on the film. If you're going to do a musical, go all the way, like with Nightmare Before Christmas. Make it an operetta. If you're just going to have 3 or 4 stupid pop songs, don't even bother.
All right. You hear that, Miramax with Thief and the Cobbler? Anyway, okay, more characters. Who would win, Jafar or Zigzag?
In what sort of a duel are we talking here?
Just if they were fighting and using their powers to destroy each other.
Powers. Zigzag doesn't really have any powers. That's why he's so funny. I think Jafar would probably kick his ass. I'm afraid.
Well, Zigzag can control people, though they may seem complex.
It appears that way.
Did you even watch the film, Kevin? Just kidding.
I've heard of it.
All right, so Jafar, I would agree. Also, Zigzag, for as awesome as he is, he seems pretty light on the powers.
But that's why I like Zigzag, because he's a goofball. He's not really a menace per se.
He really is. I said it in the podcast last week, but I didn't even realize he had extra fingers until I saw the documentary.
Oh yeah, extra fingers, extra joints, extra everything. It's just to make it more complex. The reverse of 4 digits on every hand.
The guy is nuts. Going on a little zigzag tangent here. I really think his character design is more interesting than Jafar's, but Jafar as a whole, I think, is a more respectable villain.
Well, he's tougher. Yeah.
All right, last question. Oh, Chelsea made the comment. Who's more evil of the two, Zigzag or Jafar?
I think Jafar manages to be a bit more evil. So, Jafar.
Yeah. Zigzag's always smiling. He gets really angry. He gets really angry a couple times.
Well, I mean, but he delights in being bad, which Jafar also does. But Jafar is also better at it because he has these powers. So he's more of your typical villain that way. So I guess he's a bit more evil.
He also has a more competent evil bird companion.
Jafar does?
Yeah, Iago.
Yeah. Well, they have a funny... I mean, they have a funny relationship. It's, when they like laugh about the same thing or something. It's just it's weird. It's like they're old roommates or something. It's kind of funny.
I guess when Jafar went to like evil school or wherever you go in the Disney universe, they were roommates.
There probably is something like that. Yeah, they probably.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid theory. I bet they were roommates.
I'd be surprised. Yeah.
Last question: crappy Disney sequels. Which do you prefer? Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, Return of Jafar, or Cinderella 2?
I only saw Return of Jafar. I don't remember hating it, but I haven't seen it in ages, since I was like 7 or something. So
that makes 2 of us. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess just Return of Jafar.
Excellent.
52 out of 52. Well done, Derek. Extraordinary courage, man. Just think. 1 inch lower, and that arrow would have...
Well, hey, thanks for participating in Catch and Fire, our exciting segment when we meet new people.
Mm-hmm.
We're the Rotoscopers. We ask the tough questions that other podcasts are afraid to ask. Now, like I said, the documentary is just awesome. Why did you choose the title, The Persistence of Vision?
Well, it's kind of a double entendre. So as soon as I realized it, I was like, okay, I'm sticking with this. Because coming up with titles is not exactly my forte. But as soon as I thought of that, it's like, okay, this is pretty good also. And it stuck with me just because it seemed to keep working. I mean, part of it is a reference to this old belief that there's this phenomenon of the eye in which, there's an after image that lingers or persists in the retina, in the brain for a moment. And so you can have successive independent images played at a rapid speed in front of you, and as a result, because of this after image that lingers, a connection will be made, and so an illusion of movement will be perceived. And then the other side of that double entendre is just a more direct, obvious reference to Richard Williams' own ambitions. I mean, toiling away on a passion project for nearly 3 decades, and having this, you would have to have an immense amount of determination and persistence to pull off even part of such a massive project.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Thanks for clarifying that. Well, first of all, you definitely minimized your presence as a director in the film. Besides editing and adding titles and stuff.
Sure.
You really don't see any of you in the documentary, and I really like it when documentary filmmakers do that, because it leaves the audience to digest and make their own views and kind of entertain it, understand it for themselves. And so I made the mistake of saying that Persistence of Vision was just like a compilation of stock footage and interviews, when you actually did interviews, with the animator crew that was with. So tell us about the work you did bringing it all together, like all the stock footage, all the interviews. How was that experience for you?
Well, I don't remember the exact number. We had something. This is quite a broad range, I realize, but we had something like 70 to 100 hours or 70 to 90 hours of footage. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of that were the original interviews that we shot with these animators and other artists who worked with Richard Williams and at his studio and on The Thief and the Cobbler. Really it's all about constructing a narrative. When you have that much footage, and if you are going to simply make a compilation, then you just wind up with the greatest hits from 80 or so hours of material. But that doesn't really work to make a single film or a cohesive narrative. So, we had this archival stuff that were from a few, maybe like 4 or 5 television documentaries that were shot from 1966 until 1989. And we had a lot of animation pencil tests and rough animation and storyboards and work print and other goodies like that. A lot of different visual ephemera, and of course the majority being the interviews. So, basically what you do when you have all this content is, once you've shot it, you transcribe everything. And I was a bit meticulous, so I would even go down to repetitions of certain syllables or ums and ers, just to make sure everything is there. And just documenting everything that's said, basically. So then you have these separate independent scripts, basically. And then from those separate scripts, you kind of have to figure out, you storyboard it out and figure out, okay, what are the topics, what are the themes that we need to cover that are essential to telling this narrative? Sort of, flashcards or whatever. And from there, with that template as a guide, a blueprint for the movie, you can rough out, the runtime of it and what topics you're covering, and then use that to go back to the transcripts and figure out, okay, so-and-so is probably the best at describing this, or they have an interesting anecdote or an important story that really illustrates this point. And so from all of these separate sources, you eventually distill it down to one script. And that's really when the authorship comes in. You're already editing at that point, basically, and pulling it all together. That is a huge project, but I never felt, oh God, we have to do the tedious crap, of sifting through all this. That's why I was interested in it, in researching it. So the storyline, the whole narrative arc, it wasn't too difficult to find. It's there. It's a really compelling story already. And so my job was just, as best I could to bring it all in from this useful information that we had and these very engaging personalities in the interviews and everything else, basically. So the arc revealed itself fairly naturally.
Very cool, very cool. And reading some of the other interviews, the majority of the original animation crew that was with Williams, they were pretty receptive and pretty open to doing interviews.
Yeah.
Which one of them was the most fascinating to interview, in your opinion?
Well, they're all really interesting personalities. I didn't feel like anyone was the same as someone else. They all have their own stories because they come from different parts in their lives and different parts of the world, and they have different jobs and everything. They're different people, obviously, so they have different stories. One person that really stood out to me was Greg Duffel, the Canadian animator, and he worked at the studio. This was really pretty much his first job in animation. He's from Toronto originally, just like Richard Williams, and he basically got on their radar by sending fan letters to various animators. And eventually one of those letters landed in Williams' lap, and he said, we're revamping this feature. This would have been about early 1973. So why don't you come over? So he's 17 years old, and he's already the assistant and in-betweener for Ken Harris, Chuck Jones's best animator, the guy who really helped bring Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner and Coyote and Daffy Duck to life in those cartoons. His hero, or one of his heroes, essentially. And he's working for him basically on day one. And Greg's just a phenomenal storyteller. I don't know what it is about Canadian animators, but they seem to be the best storytellers. Him and Richard Williams and people like John Crispolucci and stuff like that. He's just such a dynamic storyteller, and it was a real privilege to have him sort of share the panel at our recent Ontario premiere, the Toronto Animation Festival. That was a real treat to have him on board and just to hang out with him, really, for hours, and just talk. But they were all really great. I really don't want to feel like I want to single just one person out. It was important to get perspectives from people who came there as young people, from women, from older people, from people who were there for, a year, to people who were there for a decade, whether they were animators or rendering artists or working on the story. It was important to get an eclectic mix, and really everybody had something special to share. They all have a story.
Good deal, good deal. Now, you also said that you got to see a lot of the source material. Did you get to handle some of the production material, like the physical stuff that they used?
Well, we got to hold a few cells and things. That was really cool, and just seeing, how, and the rough drawings, of course, which are great.
Yeah,
and it was kind of amazing. For lack of a better cliche, we're kind of just looking at the tip of the iceberg, partly because, some of the stuff is either stowed away in some vault, or it's just dispersed all over the world with different collectors and animators who managed to salvage this stuff before it was thrown out in the dumpsters, or, these archival bits in various forms of media, whether they're digitized or not. One animator that we met with said that he had a bunch of footage on pneumatic tapes, and that he could transfer them for us. So I said, yeah, I'd love that. And it turned out to be about 2 hours of pencil tests that really no one has seen in over 2 decades. Yeah, no one had seen this stuff in over 2 decades, basically. And it dated back, some of it, to like the late 60s. So it was sort of like unearthing this treasure trove, looking at the fossil record almost, It's like of looking at the fossil record of styles evolving and character designs emerging and certain scenes dying off and certain ones coming to life. And it was really fascinating to pull all this stuff together. And I'm certain there's more out there and stuff that we may never see, but what we managed to find was really incredible.
Wow, so it's almost like you were like an animation archaeologist.
Yeah,
just kind of coming into contact with this stuff and being able to interpret it. Like,
sure,
you said something about kind of the evolution of the style of the film, and I think that was one interesting point that the documentary made, how before the Shaw family took the rights back from the majority of the characters back when it was, and I always get this wrong, is it Nasruddin? Nasruddin, that's right. With Nasruddin, and they took back the rights for the majority of the characters, minus the thief, which was also very significant. You see how the characters definitely evolved.
Yeah.
I like how it turned out in the end, so I think taking the rights away was kind of a blessing in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
And that also explains. I don't know if you can answer this, but I watched the recobbled version on YouTube, and I'm really grateful that they uploaded it.
Oh, totally.
The one and only line that the Cobbler speaks was voiced by Sean Connery, and I don't really think it fit the character design. The voice, it kind of took me off guard. Do you think that's left over from the old days when they had an older character, the wise fool, as the main hero? Do you think it's kind of left off from there?
I don't remember when Sean Connery's name first showed up in like the credits. I remember seeing it on a press kit that was from like 1982 or something like that. But it might have been before that. I don't know. I mean, if it's just one line, they could have just re-recorded it. I mean, I think it's disposable. I mean, obviously they had to get rid of some stuff. It wasn't like, they had more than enough material, whether it was backgrounds or voiceover recordings or animation itself or whatever. So, I don't know. I think it was just a joke. I think it's just Richard Williams' sense of humor. I mean, obviously it doesn't fit. I think for Williams, that's the joke, that it's so out of there,
Yeah, no kidding. Although at that point, I think I would have preferred Matthew Broderick's voice for that one last line, but that's it. Like,
maybe, but if I'm going to play devil's advocate, I feel like it might have seemed he's got such a sweet, banal sort of voice that I feel like it would have come across as too saccharine or something.
Okay.
It's already kind of I mean, this is just me saying that, and I don't know what Williams would say, and maybe he would. I don't know if he would voice anything similar or different, but I don't know. I feel like if you're going to have a character that's essentially like a silent movie actor throughout the movie, but he has to have one line at the end, and it's those words, I feel like making it a joke maybe is better move. But I don't know. I mean, it's weird because the style of the film in terms of tone is also quite amorphous. There are aspects of it that really are striving to be a big, epic film. I mean, Williams wanted it to have like an intermission. He wanted it to be a road show.
Yeah.
Kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey or Lawrence of Arabia or something like that.
Yeah, Lawrence of Arabia.
A big epic, which even by the late and mid-'70s was kind of out of fashion. But on the other hand, he also has all these elements that are kind of... He's interested in experimenting with animation in a way that's also very playful. So there are things that are, definitely inspired by early Disney and certainly the Warner Brothers cartoons. And so, the tone is kind of all over the place, for better or for worse. It's kind of a mishmash of elements. And I don't know, to me that works. Okay enough. I mean, it makes sense in that universe that Williams has constructed.
Yeah, good deal. Yeah, and I agree that the tone of the film and the general look of the film is definitely very epic, especially the recobbled version. And then you definitely get kind of a silent film kind of feel to the whole thing. And then what you said about the final line of the Cobbler reminds me of when did The Artist come out? Was that 2011? And at the end of the film, you finally hear the main hero talk, and you you realize why it kind of gives away important plot points. You know, this is why he was struggling with this the whole time, you know, as a silent film actor. And it kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, I never considered that it was kind of a sense of humor kind of thing, having that one line at the end be just Sean Connery's like voice that seemed a little out of place. Now, how long did this all take? So you got all this footage, and you had the task of editing it and forming a story. How are you going to tell the story, like you said, and then the source material that you came across? How long did it take to kind of put it all together?
Well, the project kind of came on my radar. I think about August or September 2007, when I first got into college. A friend of mine told me about this lost animation epic. And I saw Garrett Gilchrist's fan edit to the recobbled cut. And I got in touch with Garrett, who, of course, did a fantastic job, and just said, send me everything you have. And in doing so, he just, that just fueled my own obsession with this story of obsession even more. So that was when research was happening. A couple of years later, almost exactly 2 years later, I started emailing people who I knew worked on the film at different points or at the studio at different points in time and saying, would you ever possibly, maybe hypothetically consider to being in a documentary about Richard Williams and the Thief and the Cobbler? And the vast majority said yes. And even if they felt that they weren't, that they wouldn't go on record, they still were supportive of the project. And that meant a lot. So by August 2010, my line producer, Sarah, and I went to London for 2 weeks, shot the majority of the interviews there, and then in the coming weeks, we shot a little bit more in New York and Toronto. And as soon as you've shot enough stuff, you already start editing with a documentary, just to see if anything is missing in the storyline, if you need to go back and get footage or just talk to someone else and get coverage of a topic or something that they may have omitted in their interview or that you forgot to prompt. And then it ended up on HD Cam and its final print for the festivals in early September 2012. And it's kind of just been snowballing at the festival circuit from there. It's been very surreal, but a huge honor. I've never expected it to go to get this sort of recognition at all, to be entirely honest. I really didn't expect it to go to any festivals or really anyone to really see it, but people did, and it doesn't show any sign of stopping yet. So,
yeah, I think that's definitely a triumph, and I really think it does well to kind of build awareness about this film. Because when you watch the recall version, like, you have to be convinced that this really could have been the greatest animated film of all time. Just like, once you consider all the work that went into it, and and the journey of the film being produced is epic in itself. Just how long the amount of time it took, how long it was in production, and so again, very good story you told there.
Thank you.
Now, Richard Williams is definitely the person of interest in Persistence of Vision, but there's also the story of kind of this tragic tale of a giant epic animated film, The Thief and the Cobbler. So, in your opinion, which is the most important story that you told, or is it more about macros and more about the whole story of the two elements?
Well, I mean, they're both fascinating, and it's hard to separate the two. I think looking at The Thief and the Cobbler is important because, it differed a lot from most studio-made films with a big budget. It was really more of an art project. He wasn't trying to make a Hollywood-style blockbuster. This was his art project that he was toiling over, refining, perfecting. Not unlike, I think, a painter making their magnum opus or a composer making their greatest symphony. I think he was doing the same thing in a different art form, but in an art form that is in an industry or in a business that has does certain expectations and demands, or that requires a certain amount of resources and work from other people and involvement from other people. And I think also the film itself is important just because of how it had an impact on the world of animation in general. I mean, having a certain distinct style to set the time or the place or the setting of the world that you're trying to create, and obviously the very intricate character designs and performance, the level of detail, I think is still something that inspires people to this day. It's an amazing film because it was started in the 60s and was wound up in the 90s. It has a timeless quality to it because it covers so much of our time and all these influences from, in film and in animation and other art forms, that it doesn't quite feel like a movie that's stuck in the early 90s or the late 60s. It has a little bit of everything, and I think it still feels like this is a really unique work of art. But for me, saying all this stuff inevitably boils down to Richard Williams himself. I think his film was very unique and beautiful, but I wasn't seeking to make my documentary about this, ruined masterpiece and how we should all be sad about that, ultimately. Essentially, what held my interests for all this time was I wanted to make a character study. I wanted to make a portrait of a man and of an artist. Even with my limitations, I wanted to try the best that I could to make a three-dimensional portrait of someone who was not only an important artist in his respective medium, but also a fascinating and exceptional human being. And for me, that human element in the story is at the core of the project. And I'm happy to say that seems to, at least for some people, that seemed to translate. I mean, I've had several people come up to me after screenings at festivals and the like saying things along the line of, I never had a previous interest in animation or even in filmmaking, but they still found the story really affecting or riveting. And, that means a lot. And I think that's what held my interest, too.
Definitely. If Chelsea and Morgan were here, they would agree. And I agree. The film was very emotional, especially towards the end, when you realize kind of when you get to kind of see the I guess we could say the ultimate downfall of the movie, and you also get to kind of digest Richard Williams's I wouldn't say faults, but maybe weaknesses in management or just downright bad luck. All the horrible things that happen with the film that cause it to ultimately not be able to be completely released, and that struck me emotionally. And we had a really good discussion on Williams himself, and the documentary definitely helped paint that 3D portrait, like you said. Now, in your opinion, coming into contact with people that knew him and the stock footage of him, what were some of Williams' best qualities as a producer for The Thief and the Cobbler?
Well, if you mean a producer in the usual sense, he needed other producers, of course. I mean, he was produced because he was the one who, from the majority of that time, it was an independent film, and so that was coming from really his pockets, from doing thousands and thousands of, commercial assignments. But, I think what his strengths really were in that he was able to cultivate and galvanize a real enthusiasm. Sure, he had a tough love personality and approach to his work ethic and the way he had demands toward his staff. Some people even said, in a tyrannical way or oppressive way, if they didn't meet his expectations. But he could also be on the other end of the spectrum. As much as he may criticize and make an example out of somebody for doing something improperly in his view, he would also, go crazy in a very positive way if someone did it right. I mean, he'd show everybody. He'd show, the secretaries, the runners, even the postman, if he happened to show up, just saying, like, look at what so-and-so drew, look what they did, aren't they brilliant? Which was also a way of, I think, motivating others at the studio to, hey, I want to do that. He seems to like their work, So I think it was his enthusiasm, above all, that was tremendously contagious. So even people that were starting to see, this movie may never get finished, I think they still kind of went along for the ride, most of them, until they had a really bad falling out with him, because they were gaining something. It was not just a job. Everybody I spoke to, pretty much, whether they had a falling out with Williams or not, whether they were there for 6 months or 10 years, almost everybody I spoke with agreed that one of the most, if not the most important and influential parts of their lives as an artist was at Richard Williams' studio. And I think that really has to do with his impact, his tough love approach, and also his sincere enthusiasm. They all felt it was a special place to be and that it was a special project. And I think that, that's something unique to his personality.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, cool. And then you mentioned that, and it's evident in the film that the animation crew that was with him, whether through the early days when it was an independent film to when Warner Brothers picked it up, the animators definitely grew, and they were able to really hone their skills being under, you could say, the tutelage of Richard Williams. We also saw the portion of the documentary where they bring in Art Babbitt, and he had a lot to teach them. And so what I got from it was that it was the studio, Williams' studio was almost like a school for animation in some aspects, and that a lot of the interviewees expressed that they developed their talents and skills with Babbitt and Williams during that era, and that it affected their lives. And, like you said, now how do you think Williams' experience with the film, and how do you think his studio's experience with the film affected the world of animation?
Well, all those animators coming in after all those years, most of them went out to continue to animate. And sometimes that involved them starting their own studios, like animators like Richard Burdett or Tony White. And some of these studios are still flourishing today, really, and still animating, especially in the UK and in Europe in general, but also in Hollywood. I mean, people like Eric Goldberg and Andreas Deja and others, Chuck Gamage, they continued to animate. Dan Haskett, of course. So they had a tremendous influence. I mean, these are people who are still working at Disney and at Pixar and at DreamWorks and all these other places, and still using the tools that they got from working with Richard Williams, whether it was on The Thief and the Cobbler or on Who Framed Roger Rabbit or on the numerous commercial works or whatever. And that gets passed down, So you're right, it was like a school. I think that's another thing, which also means a whole lot more work, because in addition to doing your work hours, you have homework at the end of the day too. So not a whole lot of sleep, but a lot of experience gained. Yeah, but a lot of experience gained. And I think that that's really where the success of that studio, it's in that legacy that's persisted on and continues to do so.
So they're basically paid to go to school, in a sense.
In a way, yeah.
Says Chelsea.
Yeah. I mean, boot camp, I guess you could also say. But, you
boot
kind
camp
of are.
Is a very good term for it.
He would, Williams would often recruit young people to kind of have a clean slate as best that he could, but that wasn't because he was trying to influence them with his particular style entirely. It was really because he had access to the masters. His philosophy was going back to 1940 and rewinding the clock, back to that time and starting from there. Starting from what they had figured out in 1940, in the early 30s and early 40s, with animation, all the basics of character movement and the illusion of physics and gravity and overlapping action and all these other sort of techniques in animation that people like Art Babbitt and like Ken Harris had. And it wasn't just Ken and Art Babbitt that showed up. Other animators, most of the Nine Old Men and other people showed up too. But they showed up the most frequently and were working on the film the most directly. And I think had the most unique relationships with Richard Williams and with the crew in general. So yeah, it definitely had that sort of a feeling to it, that it was not just a company and a place to work. It kind of became your life because it consumed your life, because it had to based on the time, but also it was contagious, that enthusiasm, and that's kind of why you were in the business in the first place, to learn and improve. And it seems like a really special place for all of its flaws. For that.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you had this experience of making this film, and I'm sure I'm sure in some parts you'd used your experience as a documentary filmmaker to tell the story, but you also, it sounds like it was also some new stuff for you too. Now, as a filmmaker, what have you learned, as far as, I don't want to be cheesy and say life lessons, but like, what kind of big lessons have you learned from the story of The Thief and the Cobbler? The story of its production, not the story in the film, because, when you get into the film, the moral I got from it is, you need balls to get ahead or to succeed.
Yeah.
So literally and figuratively. Now, from the whole story of the production of The Thief and the Cobbler and Williams' story, what have you learned from it all?
Well, it's a little tricky because I think there are things to learn. I mean, obviously, budgets matter, schedules matter, but hindsight is 20/20, and we should learn from the past, certainly. But I also feel that there isn't one unique takeaway message. I don't think this functions as a parable, because even though it's about this master artist who didn't get to complete his magnum opus as he wanted it to be, I don't think it's a story of failure. I think the most common reaction that I get from people is that it was inspiring, even though it seems on the surface to be about a failure. So I think really it's not a parable, or there's one essential moral lesson to take away from it. I think it's really just my attempt at examining this unique person at this unique place, at this unique point in time, with a unique dream, So I think that's really what it's about. But I think, what really drew me to it partly was also just that, it's relatable in some ways. I mean, obviously I'll never be as talented at anything as he was at what he excelled at. But it's relatable in the sense that you kind of have to be a little crazy and a little ambitious and obsessive to get a project like that off the ground, certainly for a masterpiece like that. So, and he was his own harshest critic, too, always toiling over it, always trying to perfect it. He was a perfectionist in the truest sense of the word. So I think it's relatable for a lot of people that work in filmmaking or in the arts in general.
Awesome. And I agree. I don't think ultimately it's about the failure of the film, because there's kind of a little light of hope at the end, because the documentary hints at a kind of a super secret project that Williams is producing right now. And when I saw that, I got a little sarcastic, and I was like, "Oh, brother, how long is this gonna take?" But again, the word persistence, I guess it's kind of the rosebud of the documentary. You get exposed to the persistence of Richard Williams, even to the very end, because he's still working on stuff.
Yeah, and I find that inspiring because he hasn't given up. He was heartbroken and devastated.
Sure.
Gestating this baby for over a quarter of a century, essentially, and then having it taken away and then mutilated. But he's still animating. He's 80 years old and he's still animating. I think that's it wasn't really about him. I really don't think it was about the project even. I think it was just about the art, for him.
Yeah. Now, having produced a film about Williams and his crew and the whole experience of the Thief and the Cobbler, I suppose you're not an animator, as you said, but what advice do you have for maybe film students or maybe visual art students who have kind of the same hopes and dreams as Williams, having gone through the experience of filming the documentary? What advice do you have for them, if any?
Well, it's hard to say because I'm kind of new to that playing field also. But I don't know. I guess budgets matter, schedules matter, and people's feelings matter. If people screw up, unless it's some malicious intent or complete negligence, they're usually trying. So respect that people can screw up and that they aren't you. Communicate with them, make it better. I mean, I've had to learn this, of course, from my own projects. I think everyone does who has to work in any capacity on a film. A collaborative effort like that does. And I think also, and this is something you can learn from Richard Williams and other people too, is just that, be persistent. And that involves, it doesn't just mean putting your demo reel on Vimeo and waiting for people to flock to you and for the view counts to add up. It's an active process, and I'm still in that process myself, of course. But if there's someone whose work you admire, send them an email, send them a letter, call them up. I don't know. That's what Williams did to get in touch with the old guys and learn from them. I mean, he was the director of a film, several films, and projects, and head of a company. But he was also a student. I think he always considered himself a student. So I think you should always have that humility. You should never really be entirely content, I guess. It's always good. Otherwise, you're just going to stagnate. So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm new to this world too. But I guess what's been working for me and what I think are just good values are keep at it. Don't just wait for things to happen to you. Make them happen as best you can. Something like that.
No, it was very good, and I think something. And you mentioned, budgets matter and management matters and people management matters. We definitely agree. Like on the podcast, we often see. I'm an animation student myself. I wouldn't consider myself an animator, but trying to get to that status. Morgan is a marketing major who's she's doing that, and Chelsea is an overall appreciator of animation, and a music artist. And so, with the different views on the podcast, we often not only talk about the art or the the technical animation and stuff of a film, but we also talk about the management side, the marketing side, and I think. Like you said, and I think we'd all agree, animation is an industry today. And so, if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to develop your talents, if you don't know how to make the right connections, you can easily have a lot of talent, raw talent and skill, but you might not get the places that you want to go because you don't have these manage yourself or to market yourself. And so your words about about budgets and how to treat people in a studio situation or in a manager position, those are really wise words. I think visual arts students and prospective animators and filmmakers can definitely take in. Now, the super secret project. How did you learn about it, and what can you tell us anything about it?
Well, Richard Williams has hinted at it here and there in a couple of interviews. And apparently it's a project that's even older than The Thief and the Cobbler. Not that he's been working on it since then, but he's had this idea since he was a teenager, I guess. And I think it's only until recently that if he can pull it off as an artist. Even post Thief and the Cobbler, I think it wasn't until after that he realized, okay, now I think I can tackle this. I haven't seen any footage of it myself. I spoke with an animator who knows that there's animation of a phalanx of soldiers in a field, which sounds very exciting. And it's apparently just pencil to paper. It's there's no cells, there's certainly no digital elements that there's no paint. It's just a man and a piece of a pencil and some paper, basically bringing these very meticulous, precise drawings to life. Williams has said recently that he's finished the prologue, and that the prologue functions in such a way that if he can't finish the rest of the feature, because, he is 80 years old, if he can't finish the whole movie, the prologue alone will stand as a short and can do that. But
the prologue itself is 4 hours long, so it will be a double feature, or it'll be a double release.
Right. Well, I think it's just about less than 10 minutes, but probably 7 or 8 minutes. But what's interesting is actually when I was editing my documentary, and this was late into editing it, really. We were just wrapping up a lot of the finishing touches. I noticed that in the last shot of my documentary, before it cuts to the credits, you can actually see, slightly out of focus, some artwork for this film. And that was sort of like this crazy little, I guess, Easter egg or something, this hidden thing that I didn't even notice in my own documentary until
now I got to
on.
go back and see it again.
Yeah, it's just for a few seconds, but you can see it if you. It's long enough that you can get a good sense of what it's going to look like. or what it might look like. So all the more reason to check it out, I guess.
All the more reason to check it out. I tell you what.
Yeah.
Boy, we're gonna. Wow, I didn't even catch that. I got to go back and see it now. Well, awesome. Very cool. Well, hey, thank you for your remarks on the documentary and about your views on Williams and the Thief and the Cobbler, and really cool stuff.
Thank you. Oh, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, really, really. Now, you said that you were an intern at DreamWorks Animation.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of work did you do there?
Well, this was 4 years ago. I was in college at the time.
Okay.
And it was 2009, and I was officially in the post-production department, but they had already released their only feature of that year, which was, I think, Monsters vs. Aliens. I think that came out in March of 2009, and I was there for like the summer months. So as a result, there wasn't a terribly large amount of work for the interns to do in post at the time. So I would check in with the post-production department, see if there was anything going on, and I'd work with whatever they had for me. But if they didn't really have anything, this was sort of my opportunity to be proactive and check out what the other departments had to have. So I was able to kind of, when there wasn't much happening in post, I was able to dabble in a lot of places in the big pipeline and look at other tasks and work. Like, I was able to work in editorial, get exposure to the animation department, work in the art department, marketing, research and development. It was a really great opportunity, and I kind of lucked out that summer. And I got to speak with some interesting people too. This was a chance to, if I wanted to talk to the production designer Alex McDowell or director Steve Hickner, I could send him an email or phone him up and say, "Hey, when are you free for lunch?" And
oh my gosh,
and have a great conversation with them. Yeah, and just talk to them one on one as people for like over lunch or coffee or something. So that was really cool.
Oh my goodness! So it sounds like since you were an intern, you basically had access to the studio like as a whole, and that's super neat. So tell me about the process of getting an internship at DreamWorks.
Well, I mean, I knew a couple of people that worked there, but I kind of had to go through the same process. It wasn't like they were like, "Hey, here's this kid, hire him, make sure it happens." I still had to go through the same application process, and they thought I was good enough or something, and I got in, thankfully.
Yeah, good deal. Good deal. Any other comments on the studio environment at DreamWorks?
Well, you're going to think I'm like advertising, making a commercial here, and I assure you they're not paying me anymore.
We'll add a disclaimer. Yeah.
But I really am being entirely sincere when I think, at least from where I was coming from as an intern for those months that I was there, it was a really fantastic experience. There's a reason why. There are several reasons why a lot of these publications like Forbes and the rest rate the company so highly. And part of that is because of the excellent employee morale. I mean, they really take good care of the crew at the studio. It's a nice campus. They've got all these activities and free movie screenings and concerts and things. And, I feel like maybe this is not that abnormal and maybe it's changed. I think they're still doing a great job, though. But big companies like that, I think, personally, can certainly afford to make their hardworking artists and employees feel welcomed. And I think DreamWorks does a really good job at that, a really great job based on, what I saw there. And, they're making a lot of exciting projects, too. I mean, so that's really cool.
Cool. Well, thanks for those comments. I've always I've talked to people from Pixar and other places, but I've never got to hear about how DreamWorks Studio is like.
Yeah.
So very cool.
I've heard some people say, again, I'm not trying to sell anything here, but I've heard some people say that of all the studios they've worked at, the modern big studios in LA, DreamWorks has been their favorite just because of the working environment and the general attitude, at least for those reasons. But I'm sure that they all have some good points. I mean, they've got to keep their hardworking artists on board somehow. So,
Yeah, definitely. Well, Kevin, any other last thoughts, comments, or tirades, monologues, anything that you want to add at the end of this interview, because we're about to wrap up?
Well, yeah, certainly monologues. I've been yammering your ear off here.
No problem. That's why we're here.
Cool. I'm glad, because it's been fun. If you want to learn, I guess, more about persistence of vision, there's the Facebook page where we regularly, usually often daily, post artwork, videos, exclusive content, news articles, reviews, and of course we post regularly the screenings that are coming up at various festivals and other venues around the world. I mean, it's been doing astonishingly well, and that's how to really track down the movie. There's a Facebook page and Twitter account, and we'll keep you posted. Hopefully, it's fun to see it in a cinema. So I'd really encourage that. There's nothing like seeing a movie on a big screen, and I think the animation in Richard Williams' film The Thief and the Cobbler, and the other stuff he did too, Pink Panther and Roger Rabbit, and there's something really special about seeing that. So for me, I'm really thankful that people are, whether they're hardcore diehards of this story or animation fans, or even if they're just the general public who didn't really have an interest in animation or filmmaking. It really means a lot to hear from all these different people, to know that they found the story effective and affecting and gripping. That means a lot, because I wanted to share this story in the first place. So yeah, that's my long rambling of just saying thank you, I guess, for everyone who's been supportive. It means a lot.
Yeah, good deal. And thank you so much for taking time out of your week to interview with us.
Oh, no problem.
Really appreciate having you on here. I learned a lot. I think Chelsea learned a lot listening. And she put a little smiley face on the Google Doc I'm reading off of. We want to thank her for making this interview possible, because she has the recording software. And also, I know I've been asking the questions here, but Chelsea also provided a lot of side questions and feedback on the chat on the Google Doc. So it wasn't just me; it was a lot of Chelsea here too. So we want to thank her as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Kevin, I want to wish you luck with I don't want to say fame, but it is getting famous. I want to wish you luck with this ongoing experience of The Persistence of Vision. I can't say it enough. Terrific documentary. Very good job. And what we'll do is in the show notes for our episode, I don't know if you've been on our website, but we put like a kind of a summary or kind of key points of every episode. And at the end, we'll be sure to leave the Facebook page for The Persistence of Vision, and the Twitter handle for Persistence of Vision. I'm sure you'd rather people go to follow that Twitter than follow your personal Twitter account, but you never know.
Well, that's the only Twitter I have. So,
hey, good deal. All right. Well, hey, it's been great, and we're gonna have to let you go. Thank you so much, and have a great week, and best of luck with the film in the future.
You too. Thanks so much, you guys. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, amigo. See ya.
All right. See ya.
That was such a good episode. I'm really glad we were able to have him on the show.
Yeah, me too. It's great to get the opinion of someone who is directly in contact with Richard Williams and mostly his animation crew, and then all the production material he got to see. I'm kind of jealous.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I don't know if he got to do this, but I would have loved to just unfurl that giant background
yes.
drawing of
of
Baghdad or the Golden City. That one that was like 20 foot by 20 foot.
Yeah. That was
and he was like, yeah, we've got this like giant drawing that you have to takes like 5 minutes to unfurl, and somehow we're going to animate this. Again, that's just ridiculous. So yeah, this will be a good complementary material or supplementary material, however you want to do it.
Yeah, it supplements a lot of the things that we didn't know, and that's really cool, because there's a lot of different things that it just boggled my mind. I love the fact that he said some of the animators that were in the documentary got to go and work with all these legendary animators just because of a fan letter. How cool is that?
Yeah, real cool.
I just kept thinking, wow, the power of appreciation right there.
Well, it reminds me of our experience as a podcast. We really come into contact with a lot of these people through Twitter, email, not really Facebook, but those kind of electronic media, which are basically the fan letters of today.
It's true.
I bet animators and directors get a lot of annoying fan mail, but and I'm sure that makes them all the more appreciative. What do you have any suggestions? Can we meet? Can we talk? And so I think the big lesson here is that, one, to have persistence in developing your talents, but also appreciating the greats that are around you, and making an effort to reach out to them. Because like today, like, you send out an email or like a tweet, trying to get an interview or trying to bounce some questions off of an animator or a director. Like, what's the worst that could happen? They're going to say no. They're not going to like banish you to. They're not going to like berate you or like yell at you. They're just going to say no. And if they say yes, then you're going to have an awesome experience. So
right. And also, like, today, I feel like there's so much negative talked about. Like, people think it's cool to be negative and to, like, be like, well, type
meh.
Meh, right. When it's like there's just so much more that gets done when you're positive and you appreciate people. Like, anybody who, like, says all these different things, well, they should have done this, and then if they were ever actually to get a chance to talk to those people, they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, this is awesome, this is awesome, and it's like their opinions totally change in that moment. So it's like, I just realized that it would be incredibly awesome to talk to these people who actually get things done. So,
yeah.
Really inspiring.
So, really cool interview.
For sure. Well, once again, thanks for joining in with us this week. Our next episode is actually a fan-voted episode, and it is the wonderful, drumroll please, Meet the Robinsons. Okay, so now you know. Everybody has their assignment. Go ahead and watch Meet the Robinsons. It's going to be a great time. And after you watch it, then go and send us a voicemail. That is your job. For voicemail, you can go to therotoscopers.com/voicemail. Make sure to get those in the next couple of days. That'd be awesome. For show notes and more, head on over to therotoscopers.com/podcast, or you can head on over to therotoscopers.com/45 for the direct link to this episode. You can find Mason at Mason SMTX, like San Marcos, Texas, on Twitter. You can also find me on Twitter at Chelsea Robson. You can also check out my website, which is chelsearobson.com, which, at the moment leads to my Facebook. But hey, you never know when something might pop up. Morgan Stradling, you can find her at Morgan Stradling on Twitter as well. We got lots of fun times. Head on over, check us out. Follow the Rotoscopers on Twitter, on Tumblr, on Facebook. Everywhere you can find the Rotoscopers, follow us. Also check out the YouTube. We got lots of good stuff coming out there. You fans are amazing. We will see you later. Once again, give us your voicemails. Okay, bye everyone.